So you guys know that I've done business with this guy before, right?
Wait, what?
Well, he's been somewhat difficult to work with. But
We know that very well.
Yeah, don't say.
Well, Barry, welcome to the Learning Machines podcast.
Thanks.
I'm really happy that you're on. I'm glad that you came. And if you could go ahead and just tell a little bit about your backstory, a little about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I'm not a native Nevadan. Okay. I grew up in Wyoming on a ranch, and the days were long. It was cattle ranching. Okay. So, and I used those cows to put myself through college at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. I then, after that, went to Denver, Colorado for about 15 years. Worked in television and media, but those were tough, lean years. I got married down when I was out there. Had 2 sons, and then in 2000 I came out to Nevada, right, to take advantage of what was going on out here. Worked in construction for a while, so underground utilities. Transitioned to finance. Then transitioned to commercial finance, and then I got my MBA from Pepperdine in 2015. And then, we kind of wind up where we are right now. So as you grow older, you just watch things evolve, and we wind up talking to you guys now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you do when you were growing up on the ranch, Barry? What were some of the lessons you've learned there that is a takeaway to your life now?
Yeah, you don't get a day off. Right. So on one hand, I always said, my folks were Catholic, right? So you were supposed to go to catechism, and that was every Sunday, and that just bored me to tears. So when I got put on the ranch, it literally was 3rd grade. I started irrigating fields. There was no time to go to church, right? So I got out a lot of church business, right? Even though I'm baptized Catholic, but it was self-responsibility, and I think probably the most important thing that you learn is you learn to see problems ahead, okay? Mm-hmm. So there's a euphemism out there, probably all across western part of the United States, where it doesn't do you any good to close the gate after the animals got out of the field, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. It's like, make sure your fences are up, make sure your livestock's contained, make sure your problems are in one place, and you try to, confine any issues to one area if you have it. And I know that people think that when you grow up on a ranch or something, even the perception today is, you're a bunch of hayseeds. It was, who was the guy running for president who said, yeah, he could go out there and farming's easy, just put a seed in the ground. And where I came from, everybody was insulted. It is not that,
Yeah,
right?
not, yeah.
You can't just put a seed in the ground and expect it to grow, right? It takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of engineering, believe it or not, to be successful in that industry. And the payoff is not big, right? Yeah. It's only on economies of scale it is. That's why you see people like Bill Gates buying up farmland after farmland after farmland. You get it large enough, yeah, you'll make millions of dollars. But the investment in it is tremendous. So the farmers and the ranchers that you see these days, they make $70,000, $80,000 a year, maybe. Right. I'd say it's probably more like 50, 60. Right.
Yeah.
Where I was growing up, which is in the northern part of central Wyoming, up in Montana, they were finding the coal seams. That's the first time these guys ever had any money, because the companies would come in and they would go, yeah, we're gonna buy your mineral rights from you. Right.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't go and put up new houses and travel across, over to Europe and things like that. They all went and bought a new truck. Right. Like, all of a sudden they're making dividends of $250,000 a year, and their mental attitude is, well, I don't need all that stuff. I'm going to buy a new truck and trailer and maybe a new tractor,
yeah,
right, to make what I'm doing better, right? So nobody quite understands that, and certainly I don't think any politician, unless they're from that area, gets it. But it's the anticipation of what's going to happen if you don't keep your business organized is probably the greatest thing that I ever picked up from growing up on a ranch.
So you started in farming, made your way into construction, then into finance,
right? And
now you're throwing your hat in the political arena. What is it that made you want to make that jump?
Well, it was January, February, and first of all, I got to be real honest with you. It is almost like an unforeseen force, right? When things get so bad that you feel compelled to do something, and you could say it's even godly, like, because this is the last thing that I ever wanted to do. But when you see stuff going so bad, and like I said, you can anticipate what's coming on down the road, that I was sitting there going, I understand now how when I was growing up, all those politicians would say, I had to get into politics because the country's not going to be here for my kids. And I got 3 of them, right? I got a 17-year-old who's graduating. And it's the difference between the way I raised my 2 older sons and him is 13 years. And then it is night and day. Wow. You know, is the way I raised my older kids was a little rougher, spoke a little sharper, could get away with that. And with my 17-year-old, I'd have to close the door and do it. Because somebody would be like, hey, you can't treat your kid that way. To me, it's just telling them the truth about life, right? But society now is so intermingled with what you do that it really curtails common sense on a certain level. So I was sitting there saying to myself and then even to Florine, this can't go on. And I'm looking at, you saw who was lining up on the Republican side, you know who you have on the Democrat side, which I just is failure. You saw who was coming in on the Republican side, which I thought was, that guy's handpicked by elites. Yeah. He is not going to go in and represent, I think, the majority of the state of Nevada. And you have to eat that as a voter, right? Well, I'm getting tired of eating that kind of sandwich. So I said, I'm going to do this, and I got to talk about things that they don't talk about, right? It's easy to talk about inflation. It's easy to talk about immigration, but nobody's paying attention to Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. Yeah. I mean, come on, guys. This is 20 years of slow death that's been going on out there, and you won't step up and take the lead on this thing. There's a lack of leadership in both parties.
Yeah, that's a great segue. Kind of being a native Las Vegan, growing up and going to the lake was a very very common thing. You know, you go with your dad, you get on the boat, and you go out there. I learned to water ski, fish. I did a lot. It's Lake Mead for me is very near and dear to my heart. And when I go out there now, it makes me sad to see the lake where it is, because I had so many great memories out there. And you kind of feel helpless, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand the water problem. And in the same token, the emotion takes over that, man, this doesn't make me feel good. Like this was a place of happiness for me. And now I go there and I look at it and it just makes me sad.
Yeah, this year was the first year that I ever saw on any kind of streaming or television that they were advertising for people to go to Lake Mead, which I think actually reflects the fact that they're not getting the payment at the gates to be allowed into the park, right? You have to go remind somebody to go do something. That means you're not making money, right? They didn't have to do that before. I've watched it for 20 years now, just drain and drain and drain. And much like you, I went out there and I could spend weekends out there, right? Gas was cheap, the boat was there, I was still youthful enough not to break bones when I fell down. But every summer that I would wind up out on that thing. And I went once from St. Patty's Day all the way through Thanksgiving. That's how big it was for me. Yeah. And it's one of those things that my sons were raised on the lake, right? You're in the middle of a desert. You're raising your kids on water, right? Yep. It was fantastic. Yep. And the things you could do out there, and you just see it dwindle. And when you start poking your nose in it and going, hey, what are you guys doing about this? Because it's a federal government issue, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, don't worry, the 7 states and Mexico are getting together and we're going to solve this problem. Yay, 5 more years. What are you guys doing about this? Oh, we're going to get together and we're going to solve this problem. Yay. And we finally got to a point where they're not solving the problem. I mean, just call it what it is so I can deal with it, right? We're not solving the problem. We don't get along. Too many contracts, too many water sharing agreements. And now they're throwing in climate change, right? Just to make everybody, it's almost like an out. You didn't manage the river correctly. That's what happened. Okay. Climate change happens. You can still manage a river correctly, right? So I was sitting there and I was doing my research on it, and it's monumental to look at, right? And the nice thing about it, I think, what I found out was, and when I was reviewing the Senate subcommittee hearing on drought in the West back in June, where their conclusion was, and they all walked out saying this, and I was falling off my chair having a heart attack. Yeah, we need more data. You've had 20 years of data. What do you mean you need more data? I can look at it and tell you what's going on, right? That's another thing I picked up from the ranch. We used to pour water shares off the mountain from the reservoirs on top of there. People get shot. You mess with that stuff. Yeah. There's ways to handle water that's fair. Okay. These guys aren't doing any of it. And I mean, the Las Vegas Valley will always have water. It's pathetic what's happening out at Lake Mead. Arizona is just going to get smoked, right? Because California does nothing. But if we rewind and we go back to what we need to do on that, the whole river system is run by the Department of Interior, right? And Bureau of Reclamation has say-so over this thing. Once I realized, after watching that video on Drought in the West, that Michelle Tootin, who runs the Bureau of Reclamation, threatens to step in and she's going to halt everything. I'm like, do it. I don't like big government intervention. This is the one you do. You take a very narrow approach to it. You go in there and say, I'm going to manage Colorado River. And I'm going to make sure people get what they can utilize. Not what they deserve, what they can utilize, right? She won't do it. They went 2 more months. They were supposed to have a solution. No solution. And we've dropped another 10 feet, right? So you're sitting there saying, okay, what we're lacking in managing the river is guts and grit, realistically. And then you look at the idea of what, this whole thing about Deadpool. Okay, Las Vegas will always have sticking a straw in it, right, and pulling water from it. But the minute Hoover Dam stops producing electricity, that's part of the Western grid. And if you ever see the Western grid, it comes out of here, it goes down to Arizona, it goes all the way up the West Coast, and it actually peaks up into Canada. Well, you pull that amount of electricity out of there, and you go and you wait for. Have you seen all the propellers they're putting up in Arizona on the other side of the border?
No, I
haven't.
haven't.
It is field after field after field of
the is it renewable energy they're putting up?
Yeah.
Is that referring to? Oh, okay, yeah.
Climate change energy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there, and then like I affectionately call it the chicken fire down south, just across the border in California. Those things run intermittently. We're going to face the Las Vegas Strip, in my opinion, right? Because I can't sit here and say that I spend a lot of time doing numbers on this. In my opinion, Las Vegas Strip's going to face blackouts and brownouts. Now, every single one of those buildings are supposed to have backup generators, right? But this is pathetic. I mean, it's pathetic across the board. And the fact that we don't have any standards for our politicians anymore to tackle something that they could have absolutely seen in advance. They could have seen it in advance when they were down 100 feet. Now they're down 200 feet, right?
Yeah.
So I was sitting there one day, and I'm sure talking Florine Zeroff, and I saw that Huntington Beach decided to forego installing desalination plants. And it dawned on me, well, if you can't put them there, where can you put them? And down in Mexico, you have I don't know what the proper term to call it is. Either it's the Sea of Cortez or the Sea of California. Will somebody make up their mind, right?
Yeah.
But we all know where it's at, right?
Of course, yeah.
So I said, well, I think we have a little bit of leverage over Mexico due to the open border situation and the fentanyl and everything like that. Why don't we just go put desalination plants down there and use our Alaskan pipeline technology to pipe all that water up into Southern California? We're going to curtail, if not just stop, the water going into Mexico. That's 1 million acre feet of water that they're supposed to be due. I don't think they ever get it, but every little bit helps at this point in time. And we just cut back California. And I think we fill up not only Hoover Dam, but Lake Powell, any dam north of us that can go up. The Flaming Gorge Dam up in Wyoming, that there's a guy up there, I think, who can take care of that. He's been complaining about it for 20 years. He was the guy who sat there and said, I've been asking for 20 years for you guys to intervene, but you don't. His name's Peter O'Toole from Future Family Farms of America, right? He can manage up there. He claims he can manage the forest to get him 144,000 acre feet of water to fill that thing up. Let him do it.
Yeah.
What stops him? Do you know? hyper environmentalism. Don't you touch that forest, right? Don't you put more water in that dam?
Yeah.
How dare you, right?
Yeah.
And it's like people don't understand that when you grow up in a Western society, you were the greatest steward of
Absolutely.
of the environment, bar none. You have to have clean water. You have to have dirt that works. You have to have clean air. You do not want pesticides. In the 70s, we even crop dusted our stuff. We did it once. That was it.
Yeah.
All that stuff's gone. We went, if you have a weevil problem on your grain, you get ladybugs now. Right? So, I mean, you do these things. And I know Monsanto and all these other big companies are pouring money into, helping make people fatter, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever they do. But I'm telling you, you're not going to find better stewards of the climate than people who grew up and utilize it for their use, right? For their income.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, especially growing up on a ranch like that, you are in tune with wildlife and all the flora and fauna that's there, and you have to be a good manager of that. Well, you see the failures in it all. You see the failures in California every year when the forest burns and then the houses go. They're not managing their land. You take all that dead wood out of there, which I still don't quite understand. I mean, maybe the environmentalists or the nature lovers are saying, there's little animals that get in there and stuff like that. Oh, okay, tell that to the billions of dollars that you just lost. Well, years ago, and I think it was the 80s or 90s, they let Yellowstone burn because that was the natural thing to do. And it smoked millions of acres. Oh, yeah.
Right? It took those little towns out. And everybody in Wyoming, though they hated it, they understood it. Right? The pine cone doesn't reseed unless it gets a whole bunch of heat on it and pops. Well, how are you supposed to put more timber in your forest if you're not doing that?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So there's I haven't had environmentalists climb on me yet and yell at me, but I don't think here's something that I always thought. This was weird. In the atmosphere, there's too much methane, and I don't know what the amount is, and they blame cattle for it, right? Mm-hmm. All my years, I've never seen anybody walk to the backside of a cow and measure its farts. So I've never seen the job description on Indeed. I've never, I want to know where that government program was that hired that person to go out and the tool. I don't even know the tool. I mean, I've been at the backside of the cow. You don't want to be there, number one. Yeah. And number two, how do they come to these computations and then blame it on one species?
Yeah.
Well, too many cow farts, too many sheep farts.
Yeah.
Well, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, but we're not blaming them.
That's a good point.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you, people are farting, right?
Yeah, absolutely, people are farting.
Yeah. So I mean, pulling that all back to Lake Mead, it's a perspective thing, right? The reason why in June, why all those senators walked out, and I have to say, unfortunately, from my home state where I grew up, John Barrasso was in that, from Wyoming, and I just couldn't believe that nobody was jumping up and saying to Michelle Tootin, "Stop it now, take control now," right? Because if you don't take control now, it's going to go down to Deadpool. Right. And I guess in the federal government's mind, it has to get that bad for them to allocate more money that they don't have, which drives up inflation, which, for them to try to fix it. And who knows if it can be fixed at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, I would like to touch on a little bit on the student debt issue. I know that you have quite a bit to say about that.
Right.
And, because, everyone here is, at least gone to college, and I know that college is a lot more expensive than it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you go to, Rice, like these two kids next to me. So,
oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat. I got my MBA in 2015, and I still got $100,000 in student debt.
But the view was beautiful from
yeah, it was tough to study.
Oh, yeah.
It was tough to study. I'll give you that. So, I mean, we need to pay our student debt, right? Me included. I don't think Joe Biden is going to give me a pass on it because it's not a degree from ITT or one of these failed places, right? And, I mean, on one level, I'm kind of like, I don't mind that so much, but let's not go crazy, because you kind of feel that those centers of supposed education were supposed to give them something that they didn't deliver, right? That being said, okay, no, you decided for higher education, you decided to do it a certain way. Okay, let's start there. I'm telling my 17-year-old, because he's trying to figure out, he's a senior in high school, what he's going to do. Yeah. And I just told him straight up, I don't know if the undergrad degree is worth it right now. Cost analysis. What do you mean, Dad? Like I said, that's a lot of money for something that you can get at junior college, or you can trade school. You go do HVAC, you learn how to put those things in, and you'll be making $70,000 a year. I'll teach you how to run a business, and you can make $1 million. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So who knows if really what you're getting from higher education is what it's purported to be. It certainly isn't the way it was when I was growing up in the 80s. You know, mom and dad were, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a accountant, you have to be a doctor, that sort of thing. And there was a purpose for it all. Yeah. We know you're going to take on a lot of debt, but there was a purpose for it all. You don't get that anymore. Now it's, I want to go to dog grooming school. That's $30,000. You're cutting a dog's hair, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
there's a sense of personal responsibility.
There's a personal responsibility, and I'll say if you do it, don't be looking for an exit, right? Because you're for the rest of us who are going to pay that debt, right? You don't get to have a free pass, right? Yeah. And I don't think that debt's just dischargeable in any way, shape, or form. Because for realistic conversation, it is owned by the federal government. Okay. And I was thinking about this the other day, because I'm in finance at the end of it. And I'm like, federal government is responsible for putting the economy in place that we're with today. And the economy's crap. And they're not really reporting on it, right? But we all feel it. It's not, your dollar doesn't go where it's supposed to. Service isn't the way it used to be. Nobody feels really good about anything. I don't think anybody's saving the way they should. Mm-hmm. There are not opportunities in the economy that used to be 2019. Let's just go back to when it was good. Yeah. Okay. I don't care about COVID. Everybody stop talking to me about COVID. Okay. It's an anomaly. It's a one-off. It's a whole nother conversation, angry conversation. But if we were there in 18 and 19, we can get back to that. Right. Yeah. So, and that was the government in 18 and 19, that was the government being managed and operated in such a way that it was beneficial to the people of the United States. You could do that. Well, you can do it again, right? So stop giving me the COVID excuse. Stop giving me all these excuses for inflation. You spent too much, okay? And now we have to deal with that. Now, going back to student loans, the government put us in this position. If you graduated your university in May, and the government is now asking you to pay, because it's been about 6 months, right? And 6 months is the time. Hey, start paying us back at 7%, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm $80,000 in debt. On top of that, I'm going to have to pay another $30,000 in interest. Start paying us back. And you can't find a job where you can manage your life because inflation is now taking a bite out of rents, gas, groceries.
Ouch.
Which one are you not going to pay? You're not going to pay your student debt, which then leads you into getting late fees and default interest, right? And then it becomes so insurmountable that you just decide not to pay it because it's the natural thing for people to do. I don't want to look at that thing. It's the government. And I think instinctually, overall, particularly in this interest, people just start blaming the government, subconsciously start blaming the government. And the thing is they're right. You should blame the government. Look at the economy you emerged into. Nobody said, borrow all this money and we're going to give you a crappy economy, right? Mm-hmm. Borrow all this money to educate yourself. You can go make money. Oh, I got the education. I did my part. I borrowed money from you, federal government, right? Yeah. And here I am walking into this economy that cannot now provide me a job that pays me enough to pay you back. And so you're going to penalize me for that, right? Mm-hmm. So once you understand that, you see that it's a perpetuating problem. And the idea for me was like, okay, we have to stop that. Okay. I'm telling you how we got there. Now I'm going to tell you what the solution is. And oddly enough, I came up with this idea that, realistically, solving problems, there's everything inside the federal government to solve a problem. You just have to look at it differently, right? So it's a paradigm shift in your thinking. And if banks can borrow from the federal government, who just prints money, makes it up, right? Sells the bonds, says, yeah, faith and credit United States, we'll back it, right? If banks can borrow from the federal government at, I think it's 3.5% now. I think when I wrote that, it was 2.5. It's 3.25. That's where it's at. Yep. 3.25.
Okay.
And the bank's holding the notes for your student loans. Why are they charging you 7%? They don't have it. I mean, I don't have the answer for that. They don't have it either, other than we need more money. You start looking at the history of this, you go back to 2013, and John McCain let the cat out of the bag by saying, oh, yeah, we took on the student debt because we needed to fund Obamacare, right? Well, what are you doing that for? That segues into questions of why you keep stealing my Social Security to fund everything else. Why are you stealing Medicare and Medicaid payments to fund everything else? But I think realistically, because you're looking at trillions of dollars, realistically, if you recognize that the federal government is basically lending you money and giving their preference to banks, that they can lend us to it at the bank preference, which is 3.25%. Mm-hmm. That makes your payment in half. And for punishment for the government, they can just wipe away all the late fees. They can, because those are unearned, right? You don't feel those things. If you had perpetual late fees going for 5 years, it hasn't cost the government anything. They're just saying you're obligated to do it by contract. So it's like it's not there, but it is by contract. Wipe them away.
Yeah.
Wipe them away, right? Default interest, same thing. You haven't paid it. It's not on the contract other than a notation, right? Wipe them away.
Yeah.
You make people's payment roughly half right now, you'll probably get people paying again. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, there's going to have to be something for it. I think I was figuring that an amortization schedule on that too would then extend the payments. I mean, I think most of the student loan debt was amortized over 15 years. Do it 30. Mm-hmm. If you choose the 30-year option, make it be pulled out of your W-2 paycheck, just like everything else does. That way you don't even know it's going. You just get your net pay, you walk home, you figure out the rest of your life that way.
Yeah, that's actually, I've never heard of that. That's an interesting approach. Yeah,
Well, we just don't have. The funny thing is, I come up with these ideas, and I'm like, oh, people are gonna think I'm stupid, and I don't think they are anymore. I don't. What's stupid is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Everything that we're doing is stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, and that may be a harsh word, but I'm not gonna take it back.
Yeah.
Please don't.
And it's good hearing you dive into like a very specific solution for something, because like so much of what you hear is just like, yeah, it's a problem, and then people give like a 2-cent solution. But to hear you walk through how you actually intend on correcting the problem, it's nice to hear.
Well, that one, because the business that I'm in and understanding finance, I can get fairly specific on. This is not a disclaimer, but say I get elected and I go address that problem specifically. That's going to be me against 50 other people, right? And they're all going to have a different perspective on it. And some of it may be valid, but at least you're in a realistic place to begin working on a policy to get people back to paying and resolving their debt issues, which is great for everybody. And ultimately, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but ultimately all my solutions at the end punish government. We're here because of our government, and government never gets punished. Mm-hmm. They expand during recessions. Oh, I'd love to be government because I'm going to get fat during a recession, right? Yeah. So they want to come in and save the people by spending money that they don't have, which is your money, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have the money. You can't even pay your bills the way they are right now, but the government can, So if you don't have the mindset of coming in and saying, look, there's one entity here that can really take a hit right now, and it's not the American people. It's the American government and the way it's managed.
Yeah.
Right? And you get comfortable with that, things can turn around.
Yeah. Yeah. Gas prices is another one I think that is gas prices for me has always been kind of a weighted out game. like gas prices going up, you wait it out, you kind of bite your lip, bite the bullet, and a few months later, a year later, gas prices are back down. Is this the new norm?
No.
These gas prices, or is it just
No, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be.
Is there anything that we can do to fix it?
Well, again, it goes back to really understanding what it is. This is what's great about this long format, right? I can tell you.
Yeah.
So, strangely enough, it goes back to the credit markets. Okay, so and then policy from the federal government. So when the previous administration was in, they were very favorable to traditional energy sources, not just gas, but home heating oil, methane, anything or not methane, liquid gas. I mean, anything else that was out there. Well, methane, yeah, you can burn that too. So what happens in the economy is there's a response from banks and creditors across the world, not just here at home, across the world. And they say, hey, Exxon, we'll lend you money. Now, Exxon's so big, you don't think it needs to borrow money, but it does, right? We'll lend you money to go explore more. We'll lend you money for drilling rigs. We'll lend you money for this. We'll lend you money for that. Because Exxon goes, hey, you give me that stuff and I can pay for it. I can not only produce enough oil to get refined to make a profit on it, but I can pay you back too, right? And so that's what happened. And when the oil companies see that the credit markets are motivated to help fund their exploration of oil or their refinery of oil, it goes across all parts of making fuel, right? Then the market becomes flooded with gas, right? And it's a simple supply and demand then. You got so much gas, the prices drop, right? And that's where we were at. Biden administration comes in, first thing he does is he fires 41,000 or 4,100? I think it was 41,000 metal workers on a pipeline coming out of Canada. He's hostile to traditional energy sources. Credit markets dried up. Says to the oil companies, you can't borrow any more money. Oil companies go, I'm not investing, right? Fuel gets pulled back. All of a sudden, your market is you got to pay more for it because scarcity. It's gone on for years, right? Everybody knows this cycle. Why Joe Biden did it is dumbfounding, right? Gets worse for him, though. He not only crushed the fuel market here, now he's going over to Saudi Arabia to get us back into the 70s with OPEC. I lived through, you guys are younger than me. I lived through that. It's stupid what he's doing. Absolutely stupid. He's going down talking to Maduro in Venezuela. It's stupid what he's doing, right? Again, you have the mechanisms within government to fix this problem and be self-sufficient as far as energy sources go, and they're not doing it. Because why? Along with cow farts, you get fuel emissions, right? So he's gone down this path. And I mean, I heard a study the other day, and I'm going to say it, but I can't quote from where it was from. But I will back it up with one other statement. All the truck engines from 2012 emit 98% less particulates into the air than the ones made before. That's technology. Why are we giving up on that, right? Now, rewind to 2008. I happened to be watching. It just right after the real estate crisis and everything crashed. Charlie Rose had the head of Ford on there right now, and Ford just dumb luck was in a huge cash position on their balance sheet, so they were able to ride out the storm of financial woes that we had in 2008. And he had the guy on there, and they were talking to him about how much money Ford had at the time, and they were making investments in this because everything was cheap and stuff like that. But they got talking about the internal combustion engine. And I remember the guy says I don't remember his name, who was running Ford at the time. Obviously, he was smarter than everybody else. But he said, he goes, don't give up on the internal combustion engine. He says, in their scientific nerd lab where they're at, he said, we're just tapping the potential of how clean we can get that engine to run. Okay, so that was 2008. 2012, they're putting out truck engines where the emissions are lower, right? Keep on technology, because when you do stupid things like Gavin Newsom out in California is trying to get rid of the internal combustion engine by 2035, I mean, yeah, go ahead, California, be your own country. See how that's going to work for you, because it's not, right? And I think those are feel good policies that they get passed statewide for him to get money, and it just puts a burden again on the regular people like you and me. But we live in Nevada, thank God, right? We're gonna have a whole pile of cars at the border, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're all trying to get down the road, get stuck in the middle of the heat because their battery burns up.
Sure. So do you see any the instantiation of renewable energy in like a mass form as something that's viable for Las Vegas?
Okay, so you have to understand what it does, okay, or what it can do. What's the limits on? Nobody's asking the question as I'm sitting here talking to you. Nobody's asking the question. What's the limits on renewable energy? I don't think that renewable energy will ever be what they're saying it can do. You're never going to go 100% wind power, solar, whatever. I mean, they're going to let the dam die.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the best renewable energy
Absolutely.
you ever have. You're using gravity, right? I mean, come on. So we could project, because I grew up that way. I'm going to project. If they can't even manage a dam, I don't think they're going to be able to manage anything else going forward, right?
Yeah.
So get in there and fix it now. But renewable energy, from what I understand, who's the head of the Mitsubishi Power, says it'll only be 20% of the grid ever. Okay. Well, if that's true, then manage it like it's 20% of the grid ever. You have your internal combustion engines. You have your coal-fired power plants. You use technology to make them cleaner. You don't go and destroy industries that's been here for hundreds of years, which the base of your economy is built upon because somebody gets a sniffle, right? So I'll tell you the story. I was when we were early on. When I first announced, you're like, I'm going to run for Senate. So you go to your friends because you want that security, right?
Yeah.
And one of my friends was having a little party, and he was like, "Come over here, get some signatures so you can get out there, right?" And so I go over there to get signatures, and I get into this group, and we're all talking about it, and it was a pretty eclectic mix, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm talking to him about it. We get on the environmental energy thing, and I said, I don't think that we should take orders from a 14-year-old girl from Norway coming over and shaking her fist at us, right?
Yeah.
And at the end, we go through the whole thing, and at the end of it, we're going around the room, and they're kind of critiquing me a bit on it. And I get to this one guy going, I said, "Well, what do you think?" And his partner there was like, "Oh, he's not going to talk to you." And then he spoke up, and he's like, "Oh, no, I just don't think you need to go and bash Greta Thunberg." And I'm like, "Dude, have you seen gas prices?" That's in the back of my mind. But I'm like, well, okay, well, tell me, what it is. He's just a single issue guy. He's like, I like Greta. That's the way it goes. And if you're going to talk crap about her, I'm not going to like you. Okay, well, I don't get your vote.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to tell you the truth the way it is, and it may not come out pretty. Never does. Mm-hmm. But you're going to get it both barrels from me. Yeah. You may not agree with me. That's fine. I respect that.
Can you speak a little bit to the sort of nuts and bolts of actually running? Like how many signatures do you need to have? What has that process been like? Is it how difficult?
Well, I do an hour on that. Psycho.
Is it really?
We got the time.
Yeah. So, it literally, I still say it scares me that they're not teaching kids in school anymore when you hear this story. My 8th grade civics class told me that I could run to be president any day, right? And I remembered that. And I'm like, well, I think they told me I could be senator too. All I had to do was raise my hand and go in, right? I don't need to be part of a political party. And I'm angry at both parties anyway. So, and just so you guys know, I registered Republican once in my life. That was back in 1984 to vote for Reagan. And then when Bush came in 1988, I went back and registered unaffiliated. And I've been unaffiliated ever since. Mm-hmm. I've voted almost 98% Republican, but I'm not saying Democrats are horrible. They're not. They're great people. The Democrat elites are morons, right? But every once in a while, somebody sneaked up into that Democrat elite party who was pretty good, and I voted for him, right? I voted for Obama the first time out, but I didn't vote for him the second time. Guy lied straight up.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the way it goes. So the process went, Florine, I'm going to run. What do you think? And she's like, "Do it, baby." Right. And I said, "Oh, we're going to find out who likes me and who doesn't." Yeah. It's always, it's always kind of sketchy to know, we're going to find out now. Yeah. So, registration was the first 2 weeks in March. And I went down there the first week just to figure it out and get a lay of the land, kind of like do some advanced stuff. And I walked in there, and there was two very nice ladies in there, and they're like, "What are you running for?" And I said, "Senate." And they're like, "Oh, really? What party?" And I said, "Unaffiliated." And they get this dumbfounded look on their face, like, "Huh?" I'm like, "No, I know I can do this. I have an eighth grade civics class behind me saying that I can run for any political office I want. That's what part of being American is, right?" And they're like, oh, yes, you can. They say, "Yes, you can do this," right? And so they say, "We have a handbook for you." And they start looking at it, and they're like, "No, we don't have a handbook for you." They have the Republican handbook, they have the Democrat handbook, they have the Libertarian handbook, they have all these handbooks, but they don't have unaffiliated. I said, "I know I can do this." They're like, "No, we know you can too." So they finally find it within the Secretary of State's website where I need to go. I need to leave, and I need to go, and I need to print that thing out. I'm like, "Just give me the information. I'll be great. I can handle this," right? And they're like, sorry. I'm like, "Don't sorry. I'll go." So I left, and I went back home, and I'm like, "Whoa, guess what? I'm going to print out this handbook, and we're going to read it all, and then we're going to make the decision." So we did. We printed out the handbook. I read through it all. I went into the NRSs and tried to make sure I wasn't missing anything. It's voluminous, right? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know everything about it. I don't know everything about everything. But I knew enough, and I think I touched on enough topics there where I was like, okay, we can do this, and there really shouldn't be a problem. And the biggest obstacle was signatures. And when I first reading it, it's like, okay, so if you're going to run, you need to get X amount of signatures. And the first sentence was, you need 1% of the total overall vote of some category. And when I calculated it, it was like hundreds of thousands of signatures. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this. This is how they keep good people out.
Yeah.
Right. And then underneath it said or 251 signatures within the county that you reside. Essentially, I don't remember the exact wording, but that's what it was. And I kept throwing it at her. Look, it says or. And we had this debate for 4 days. Are you sure it says or? I'm like, it says or. So I went down there and I registered, and I had done all the paperwork. I had my little fee to pay and things like that. And I handed it all in back to the same two little women. And they were like, "Oh, thank you." And they had me registered in 10 minutes. And then they're staring at me. And I'm like, "Yeah, is that it?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So it's like when people look at you weird, right? You're like, "Are you trying to tell me something?" Yeah. And the shorter one points at the other one. She goes, "Well, she's the principal." And I went, "Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, thank you for being in the education system." And she's like, "No, you don't get it. Nobody's ever done this." And I said, "What do you mean?" Nobody's ever walked in here with their paperwork finished, with their funds to be paid, with all the questions answered, and just handed it to us, and we've done this in 10 minutes. I said, "What do you mean?" I don't, because it's not registering with me. It's pretty simple when you read it, right? And because they were even questioning me about, "Do you know that you have to do this? Do you know you have to?" Yeah, I read that here. I read that there. That's in that book. I was answering them that way. And I said, "Do people just walk in here?" And she goes, "People just wake up, come to our office," because they only give that open window, and say, "Yeah, I'm going to run for Senate. How do I do it?" I said, "They don't come in here and figure out how to do it first." They go, "No, you don't. I mean, unless you got a political party behind you who's really worked out the system, because it's a system." Mm-hmm. Everybody walks in and then they fail, right? So I walked out of there and I'm like, weird, but okay. So if I go and get 251 signatures, I'll get on the ballot, right? So, and you have to get this approved form, and you go to the Elections Commission that's run by Joe Gloria here. And so I made the form the way it's supposed to be, and I went down to the Elections Commission and I handed in the paperwork, and they looked at me and they go, "Republican, Democrat?" I go, "Unaffiliated." Wait a second. Half an hour later, they come back from the back. "Oh, you can do this." I'm like, we printed out the book, right? I said, "Yeah," and now I'm getting concerned, right? So I kind of want to prompt them. I go, "Yeah, all I need is 251 signatures." "Oh, okay." Right? Now they want to take my word for it. So I'm like, it's true, but they're not aware of it, mm-hmm. right? Which is fine. I mean, they don't really deal with, anomalies, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So I run out and we start gathering signatures, right? And I can do that little thing. And then thanks to her family, because she's got a huge family, they helped me, I got 306, I think, at the end of the day. I got 306 and I turned them in, and You turn them in, and then they can be challenged. And you got till June 24th to challenge them. So I told her, I said, let's just lay low because, if I was a Republican campaign manager, I'd be like, let's wipe out anybody we can, right? Because it's blood sport, they say,
yeah.
right? Let's wipe them all out, right? Go challenge that little guy's signatures and stuff like that. But they ignored me, right? Oh, he's got nothing. He doesn't have any money, which is true. And so we kept our powder dry, and we were really quiet, and we got past that threshold. And when I turned the signatures in, I remember this because I was talking to her. I said, we have to tell them what to do on the cover sheet. So we're going to say, because I'm going to say, hey, it's Barry Lindemann, U.S. candidate, 250 signatures required minimum, 251 to get you over the hump. So I'm putting that on in some way, shape, or form. That makes me valid at 251 signatures or something like that. So I get a letter in the mail. Oh, you're approved to be on the ballot, on the general election ballot for November 8th. Almost quoting exactly what I said. So I'm like, I don't know if I pointed him in the right direction or not, but it was a interesting experience just to get there. And if you read everything, you can get on, right?
Yeah.
And I always told her, because people were like, well, how come you're not running as a Republican or Democrat? And I'm like, well, you can only win if you're on the ballot on November 8th. And who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
That's right.
I said, but why would I shoot myself in the foot in April or May? Mm-hmm. I mean, all those people are done. I just let the political parties take them out, right? Okay. Does that make me smarter? Well, I don't know. I'm sitting there right underneath Adam Laxalt's name.
That's right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. That is it. Man, that is such an interesting, system. Is you telling them, kind of, maybe you're just kind of reassuring them, kind of what you need. I mean, that is.
I think that was the approach. You have to remember, I'm not bashing these people whatsoever, right? Yeah. Everybody gets into their system, and you really got to be on top of your game when you get these little one-off things that come into your business.
And it speaks to how difficult it is to run unaffiliated in this country.
Well, you have to be able.
People that work at the place don't even know how to deal with you.
Yeah, you have to. Well, first of all, you should read as much as what you can before you get into this, right? And I mean, I don't have any. People always. I think candidates make a little more out of it. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I can't speak to that because I don't have the, presence that the bigger candidates have. I don't have Cortez Masto attacking me, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you read everything, it's pretty simple to get in. But just the workers are like, they don't see people like me show up all the time, so it's not on their forefront. I'm not bashing them whatsoever. It's
Yeah.
It's like, what kind of, hey, I need my oil changed in my car. What kind of oil do you take? I don't know. Do you know? What kind of car is it? I mean, you have to go find out.
That's
right.
Right.
How that works. But it was kind of funny. And then there's another guy on the ballot underneath me. I think Watt is his name. I mean, he did the same thing. I think he's unaffiliated too.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So how motivated are the people to do it? I always thought it was funny that I'm relying on my 8th grade civics class, Yeah. But they were it was funny because they're also, well, look, you did it. You're in, It's like, well, you're the elections commission, right? Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is. You got to be motivated, and I'm just angry. I'm furious, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly at that time. I've kind of mellowed a bit because now I'm in problem-solving mode. But back then, there was a little more raw emotion with me. There's a few more expletives flying out of my mouth and things like that. But you're right. That system of just looking at them and they're giving me some bewilderment faces was like, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I want to touch a little bit on inflation. I know you have a lot to say about that. We kind of touched on it a little bit through these conversations. And I know you're going to tell me it's just tell the government to stop spending money. But can you elaborate a little bit more, drill down on anything particular that?
Well, look, if people aren't aware of the name Milton Friedman, then you're not really going to understand how it all works. Okay. That guy, even though he's passed, his videos can teach you simplistically why things are broken the way they're broken. Okay. So here's the thing. yes, stop spending money. But that, you're right. That's not the complete solution. Okay. For people who are grinding out day to day, to put it in terms like this, you have a credit card, right? Mm-hmm. And you know you're going to have to pay off that credit card, and you have an income that's small enough to pay your rent, your utilities, your car payment, your student loan payment, fuel, and stuff like that. But you don't have enough money to pay whatever you needed to pay on the credit card. Okay. Well, you can go get a second job, right? Okay. So the federal government's exactly the same way. They have an income, $5 trillion. They spend $8 trillion. Okay. Federal government doesn't have a second job to go pay off the credit card. They come to you and me and ask us for the money. That's the best analogy I have. We're already paying taxes at the yin yang. Mm-hmm. And now they're going to come back and say, and this is a bill that isn't going to be due for another couple of years. I don't think they can avoid not coming after us with outside of 5 years. I think within 5 years, there's going to be a monumental shift of, we have a problem where the U.S. government goes bankrupt. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. It might be a good thing. Bankruptcy is a tool anymore, and, for people. But they don't have a second job to pay down the credit card. They were going to sit there and smack us with taxes. They're going to go, who knows? They don't want to talk about it. They just run off and start wars or participate in wars, I guess, now. Yeah. So, and what does that cost? More money on the credit card. That's right. It makes me, I'll tell you what, this makes me absolutely furious when, and Cortez Masto said it the other day, I've reduced deficit spending. I don't care about you reducing the amount of debt that you're throwing up and above what we're making. I mean, and this is where I get to, stop spending. I don't care. I don't want to hear that, I didn't spend over our budget by $100, I only spent 50. That is the stupidest comment any politician in this financial market can make, in any position there is, okay? You have to do a balanced budget. And I'm telling people, I don't even know if you can balance the budget anymore. And that's inside that balanced budget, you better start making between 3 and 5% payments down on our national debt. I went and looked it up. Joe Biden got into the federal government in 1973, Nancy Pelosi in 85, Mitch McConnell in 87. I might have those two backwards, but it's 2 years apart, right? And then who's the leader of the Senate right now? Who's the Democrat leader of the Senate? I'm missing. Chuck Schumer, 99. So those four have been responsible for what gets passed in some way, shape, or form up to this date, right? Doesn't matter that they work their way up. They're in charge now, and it's easily $7 trillion with those four right now, just here at the end. But they've been in there since that time. When Joe Biden got in the office, the national debt was roughly $700 million. That was it. You didn't even get up to a trillion, 700 million, right? Even to get to a trillion, it was something, right? Oh, yeah. 700 million. You're at 31 trillion now. I told her back in January, I said, we'll be 31 trillion by midsummer, right? Nobody ever said that. I will be there. We're going to be at 35 trillion middle of next year. I can guarantee you that right now. If they don't stop, if something doesn't stop, you get all Democrats back and you take the same players that's in there in the clown car, right? You're at 35 trillion next year. And you will be seeing serious conversations that will be run by Wall Street on what we're going to do. And it's going to be tax. Yeah. Because I don't think bankruptcy for the federal government can be envisioned that way. I don't, if I put down on a really noodled it, I could probably figure a way of getting out of it because I'm pretty good at that. But I just haven't had the time nor the challenge to do so. Okay. So, but I'm dead serious about you. I mean, I know everybody says, and I heard it in your voice, I know you're going to tell me to stop spending. Expletive, stop spending, right? So, and that's the way it's got to go. But people say, well, if you stop spending, that means we're not funding government. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Guess who lost their jobs in the last year? American people did, right? Private industry, private people. We lost our jobs. Federal government, nobody lost a job there. Nobody went, oh, the economy's so bad, we're going to cut back on federal government. Federal government never gets punished. Federal government never takes a hit, right? Like I said, it expands. I bet they put more people in, right? Oh, well, if that's true, well, it is true, right? If that's true, what are you going to do to the federal government? Well, we make it 1 for 1. I lose 1 million jobs in the private sector. You got to lose 1 million jobs in the federal government.
Yeah.
Well, you just make it 1 for 1. I don't know what to do. I cut you guys by 20% across the board, right? There are whole divisions that I wouldn't flowcharted the federal government. There's whole divisions. I'd just be like, nope, right? Yeah. It's a little harsh, but on these, it's great talking about it this way because it's cathartic for me. But you would have to take a very reasoned approach to it. But you got to stop spending. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. When you look at the state of the economy now, how serious? How serious? How much trouble are we in right now? I mean, I don't want you to predict the future, but I kind of want you to give your take on the sort of status that we're in. I mean, is this recession going to be?
It may go to depression. It may get there.
Wow.
Okay, so that's 10% unemployment, right? So this goes back to, okay, we're experiencing inflation and the federal government solution, and it's their only solution because they can't think outside the box.
Yeah.
Currently, for the current administration, their only solution is to raise interest rates. That singularly inflation is caused in Washington, D.C., and singularly it can be stopped there. But they come out and they say, let's raise interest rates, right? Which singularly is designed to create poverty, okay? It makes it tougher to borrow money. See how we always go back to that? Mm-hmm. Makes it tougher to go borrow money, which means businesses can't expand. Costs go up because production costs, because when you raise interest rates, you produce scarcity, right? Mm-hmm. Costs go up, right? And so business owners have to lay off people to offset the costs in their business, okay? So it's designed for people to be out of work. That's what it does. And hopefully by punching us, the American people, in the face that way, the market then self-corrects downward and it puts it down to a manageable level. I think if I were to guess, and this is a guess, I think the Democrats look at it as, no, we're just going to go to a new normal. I hate that term. Oh, that's our new normal, right? It doesn't have to be. You know what a new normal could be? 2019 could be that, right? But I think when interest rates went above 5%, we're stepping into dire circumstance as far as the viable economy maintaining itself in employment in such a way. And they're going to raise it again, right? They haven't quite got the shed in employment that they need.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I was sitting there thinking about it and seeing this thing coming back in February. And I'm like, oh, we got the 1970s and we don't have the balance sheet for it. We don't have the assets on the balance sheet to handle this. I think I said, if you take my balance sheet to a used car lot, they wouldn't give me a loan, right, if I was the federal government. So anyhow, I was trying to think of a way to offset this while enduring the rising interest rates. And I'm like, well, there's two tried and true methods where you can literally spur the economy, and that's lower taxes and deregulation. You get rid of regulation and you allow people out there to invest in themselves, invest in their business, you can expand an economy. And I'm not talking about vertical, I'm talking about horizontal. And you do it now because the economy's bad now. This is actually more of an opportunity for us than anything else. If you can grow the economy horizontally, you can put more businesses out there through deregulating, right? And you get them out there, you expand your tax base, right? You're going to have more to draw from while interest rates are going up. You lower the tax rate to businesses and individuals because I want federal government to feel the lack of income that they've created because we're not signaling the federal government that you're hurting us. Mm-hmm. So you go in there and you lower them down to like 15 and I think 8%, right? And I like those numbers because they're low. Right? I don't have any math behind them other than I want it punishing.
That's
right?
Fair.
I want to punish government. You guys created this like you always do. You just create bad situations so you can endure this with us. You lose 1 million people. You sit there and have the lack of income. You try to provide us with those services. Then all the politicians are going to go, oh, well, I don't have money to do this. Yeah, figure it out. Figure it out without money, because that's what every person in America does every day. You got to figure out how to get through life without cash now.
Yeah.
I think one of the most contentious issues that not just people in Nevada but across the U.S. are thinking about these days is the issue of Roe v. Wade and women's rights. Do you have any particular stance on that?
Yeah, I do. I trust women to make the right choice. Okay? Now, what I'm saying here is that in being pro-choice, there's a massive swath for life. Okay? And I hate this. I want to comment on this a bit because I hate that people take this conversation, simplify it to such a degree that you vilify both sides. And you cannot vilify both sides on this. Okay? Early on, I was saying, well, if you have a 14-year-old daughter who's been acting weird for 4 months and finally she comes to you and tells you that Uncle Jimmy raped her, and by the way, he's bipolar and has some mental issues, I don't think you want that in your bloodstream, in your bloodline, right? The most pious person in the world would want that option. And what they choose is what they choose. I'm not getting into that. But I would be like, what's my options? Don't take the option away. So women, there's been this war on women for the last 4 years anyway, right? It's like you're just perpetuating another segment of the war on women. I trust them, okay? If they include you in the conversation, great, you have your opinion, but it's their choice. So they get to go forward. And hopefully, if it's just somebody canoodling for a weekend in Las Vegas and they get an oops, hopefully they choose life. But you can't have it both ways. It's either they have it or they don't, and they get the choice in my book.
That's great.
Yeah. Is there a particular subject matter that you want to talk about that we haven't hit on yet? Is there anything that you want to touch on?
Oh, well, this was interesting because this was one of those things that you sit around and you get in this atmosphere and you start thinking about things. And when I was growing up, everybody was a big panic button was socialism, and you gotta take from everybody who made a living and give it to people who don't work and that sort of thing. And I'm against that, right? But we seriously have to look at the American public, and we're not as wealthy as what we should be. I mean, regular people aren't. Me, you, whoever else. We have to go to work. We got to do the grind. We got to do this kind of things. We have credit card bills. We got to make sure that we're on top of our game. But we don't quite have the wealth or the riches that we should. There's an enslavement to debt here, right? And I don't want to over dramatize that, but we have to get a mortgage, right? And if you're in the finance arena, you know how those mortgages work. Your first 21 years of payment is basically interest only, right? So if you have a $100 payment on a mortgage, that first payment is $99 to interest and $1 to principal. You're not owning anything for 21 years. So call it what it is. I'm going to let you live in this house for 30 years. And for the first 21 years, you're not really going to have a bite of any of that apple. After that, we'll go ahead and we'll just give you the whole house, for the next 9 years, right? And so I was thinking about it, and I'm like, and it's not a new idea. They do this over in Europe, or they had done it over in Europe. It's called a straight line mortgage. Equal amounts of your monthly payment, if it's $100, goes to interest and to principal. Every single payment for 30 years. So when you're 15 years into your loan, you own half your house. Okay? People get 10 years into it. They want to pull equity out of the house. Don't have any equity in the house. You get 10 years into it here, you're going to have 30% of your house, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, well, let's just talk at 50%. At 15 years, you got 50% of the equity in your house, right? And all of a sudden, that could be a big bundle of money. That could be $200,000. And say you want to start your own business. What do? You leverage your house. You can't do that on the current way the mortgages are designed now. Yeah. Okay? It's unfair. And so I call it the transfer of wealth, but it's without the scare of socialism going in and taking somebody else's, what they worked for, and handing it away. Now, it's a per contract transfer of wealth. You can do this because the federal government backs FHA loans. So you go to the federal government, you say, we're going to do a straight line mortgage, and you're going to back it. And I don't care what the opposition is against it, right? You're going to have banks going, palpitating like, oh, no, we can't give them that much equity in their house so fast. You know, we're going to need it in case we need to foreclose on them and stuff like that. I guarantee you, you get 10 years into a straight line mortgage, you're not losing your equity. You will find some way to make that payment. Yeah. I would say the possibility of actually making on-time payments 10 years into, 15 years into that goes up.
Yeah.
Right? So there would probably be resistance to that just because the Wall Street and banks and things like that would not want to leverage it. But that's where, I mean, it's thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you generate cash, you expand your tax base. I mean, there's just what people would do. I think the economy would explode in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So.
You wrote a book too, didn't you, Barry?
I did.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what that was?
That's a little out of the box there. Yeah, attaboy. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of one of these guys who if it comes out of my mouth, I basically am obligated to do it. Right. And though this never really came out of my mouth, but I got so sick when I was a kid. Big Tom Clancy fan. There was another guy named Harold Coyle who was a great writer. I liked that international, World War scenario. It's like one guy saving, everything kind of stuff. And my undergrad degree, I was a history major. So it took me 25 years to write. So way back when I started it, didn't know anything about writing. And it's an international thriller, I guess, and it's about taking a scenario of where a Mideast country could steal a Russian nuclear submarine. This is right after Glasnost, right in '92, and then go and nuke Israel to start a world war to put OPEC back on the map, right? Because OPEC was in decline at that time. So, and in the middle of it all, the guy, the Russian captain who they get to steal the submarine decides, he's not going to follow that program. I'm going to go reinstitute communism by parking it outside Leningrad and threatening Moscow with nuclear weapons. So,
what a twist.
So it's about the CIA kind of following this, not following it. And then there's a blow up in the CIA because it's run by an evil character and things like that. So I had to do it because I kind of said, I kept hearing, how you grow up and you get people going, you hear people saying, I'm going to write a book and nobody ever does. I'd much rather just write it and go, yeah, I did that. Yeah. So I did it. I liked the story. I liked the characters. It was a great learning process. And had this not gotten in the way, I'm about a third way through following on that. Wow. So, yeah. So I found out the publishing business is just corrupt. It is. I knew I was going to get taken.
I can imagine.
And I did. I got taken.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather just have people, if they figure out how to download it and read it and everything. I will say I was rather encouraged because I never let anybody see it. And finally I paid for an outside editor. And the first guy I sent it to, he had it for like 2 weeks. And his first comment back to me was, I was with you all the way. And I was like, okay. And the editing on it went really smooth. They didn't make a terrible amount of changes. There wasn't a lot of blood on the pages. And so we just went and published it. But that was years ago. That was, when was that? That was years ago.
Yeah. No, I knew that you did. I haven't read it and I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. It's been out there. I think it's still. If you go download it at bookbaby.com, at least I might get $1 or something.
What's the name of the book?
Red Agenda. Red Agenda. I wrote under the name Cameron Poe.
Okay.
So, Oh, was I not supposed to say that?
No.
I said bookbaby.com. Did you say it?
No. I said go to bookbaby.com.
Oh, I thought you were like, get that off. Yeah.
No.
Put that out there.
I feel like it's worth reiterating.
Yeah. Okay. So, so that's, and I got it. Yeah. So I've got another one, but I just do it when I got time. Everything's got to settle down. Obviously life's been hectic, right? Yeah, but find the time to do it. And it's almost like you have to organize your life and then go right. Mm-hmm. It's not a income producing thing for me. Hopefully when I'm old, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Barry, another big contentious issue that people in Nevada, not just people in Nevada, but people all across the country are concerned about is the border, the southern border. What are your thoughts on that?
You got, because of the way it is right now, and this is because of what's happening at this moment, right? You have to close it, except for freight, trade, right? Close it down because it's so out of control. There isn't. I haven't seen a solution on the table to repair that problem yet. So when it gets that bad, you just stop. And that's what I'm saying. Just stop. Close it. And I don't know exactly what it takes to stop it. I don't know if it takes the military. I don't know what it does. But you stop it now. And I'm so sick and tired. I don't blame those people for coming. I don't. I would want to escape Central America too, right? If the opportunity is literally actually here to work, right? There's a distinction to work and make your way and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I would want to come too. If they're coming here because government can give them a handout, as a U.S. citizen, I'm furious, right? Big difference, okay? So whichever the reason is that they're coming, they're coming. And the thing is that now sex trafficking has gone up. I watch the guy Ben Berquam down there. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's like on the border all the time, right? And so sex trafficking is horrific. I mean, I'm talking about horrific crimes against women and children, okay? And not only that, but then death, all right? So I don't know how to appropriately urge people to close the border, and I can't believe that I would get pushback from other people going, oh no, we need him to come in. And once again, the federal government is responsible for this, not only because they have an idiotic policy and approach towards the border, but they're also funding non-government organizations that go down and get these people whipped up to come up and do that trek through the border, put their lives at risk, drowned out in the Rio Grande, trek across countries where they run out of water and die, right? Or God knows what the coyotes do to them. It's sickening. It is so low a standard for our government, the way they're treating these people or allowing them to be treated or actually pushing them into a situation where they get treated this way that, I mean, it should be criminal. It should be criminal. And figuring all that out right now is a little beyond the scope of the conversation, but stop. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I said once, I remember previous administration, everybody was, oh, kids in cages and things like that. Well, they're dead now. Kids in cages is staying at the Ritz for them. They're not dead. They're getting fed, right?
Yeah.
And I don't hear this current administration now complaining about that. No, let them come across. If they make it, they make it. Oh, well, if they make it, we'll put them on a bus and ship them somewhere where nobody knows about them, right? So what does that mean? You're going to then keep them in the underground of child sex trafficking and whatnot? It's like, it's almost, it's tough to even get out of my mouth. It's so offensive, right? And the fact that first the national media is not furious about this. You're so politically invested, national media, in this policy of Joe Biden, Mayorkas, and the federal government of the United States that you will allow this to happen by not reporting on it. I don't even know. I want to present it. My solution is stop, because that's all I can get out of my mouth about it right now. And then I'll go down and look at it and go, oh God, where did we make these mistakes? Yeah. Right. So it is, it really just grits my teeth. As you can tell. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We don't need to talk about it. I think everybody gets the idea. We're just going to close the border.
Yeah. Why did you choose to run for Senate? I mean, I feel like that's a very, lofty goal for someone first throwing their hat into the political arena. But why did you choose Senate as opposed to a lower governmental position?
Well, bit of my personality, I guess. But look, here's the thing. Whether Republican or Democrat, that is a system, okay? And both systems want you to start, I say affectionately, at dog catcher. come into my system and we're going to teach you. They actually give classes on this. This was surprising to me going through this thing. They send you emails saying, hey, we're going to teach you how to run, right? Which is an indoctrination.
Like the Democrats and Republicans will
Yeah,
send
come
that
to our congressional college. Come to our school on how to be a candidate. Well, that's the first step to indoctrination. And
Right.
I'm pretty much a free guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm the guy who in class was like, you're full of shit. So I had an economics professor in college who sat there and swore to God that the economy was going to put me in my end job. And I was looking at him growing up on a ranch. I knew what hard work could do. I'm like, if you're really in someplace, you just outwork everybody. That's all you have to do. Outwork them. Show up every single day, stay longer, do more. You will outwork them and you will put you where you need to be. You don't have to rely on the economy to do that, right? So I don't mix well with somebody putting stupid ideas in my head. I appreciate smart people. And I think there's a lot of smart people on both sides, but I think it also gets back to what Tulsi Gabbard said, that the Democrats are run by elites, and to a certain extent the Republicans are, right? They have an agenda. They have a methodology. You better adhere to it, right? And I'm not that guy. I say over here on the Republican side, I like that, and that. You and I disagree here. And I go over here and I'm like, I don't like that, but I like that. I like that, but I'm not going to go with that and there. But with them, they want the whole buy-in. They want to be able to come to you, should you get that seat, and say, hey, by the way, we had an agreement. You're supposed to say this and you're supposed to do that. And that's regardless of what the situation is, right? Whatever the situation is, you have to follow our policy that we dreamed up in campaign school so it can benefit our donors. Okay? And everybody always complains about big money, dark money. Well, that's what both parties are. They are big money. They are dark money. Wall Street donates probably as much to this side as they do to that side. So you're not getting out of it, right? I heard something the other day. Somebody said, I thought about it, I went, oh my God, they're right. They said, who do you think crafts fiscal policy in the United States? Wall Street does. It's not that you elect people to go there and craft fiscal policy. The two parties are run by Wall Street to a certain degree. So Wall Street's always going to get what it was. You stick a guy like me in there, I'll be like, no, Wall Street can take a hit. Whoa, do you know what that's going to do? They're all going to lose money. I'm like, yeah, we're still going to take a hit. You know why? We're in a recession. Take the hit now. Okay? You don't want to take the hit when we're climbing out of it. We're going down. Organize everything now. Take your hits now. Right? And they're like, oh, we can't do that. We have to do this. We have to do that. And so that's why I had to go unaffiliated. It's everybody's like, oh, you got in too late. You did this, you did that. It's like, I don't know, even if I was in way early to do the primaries, that I would have done it. I mean, I watched, the only primary we had to watch was the Republican primary. And I was telling Florine early on, this is before I decided, I got furious, and the hand of God said, guess what? You're going to find out who your friends are. Yeah. God commands you to go find out who your real friends are. Run for public office, right? And so the primaries were coming up. Adam Laxalt shows up. I'm like, that's your nominee. You know why? Because he's a yes man. There's nothing more to it. It doesn't have to be that complex. He's going to do what the Republican Party says. Okay, what's their agenda? Okay, do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? Do you agree with some of it? I agree with a lot of it. I'll caucus with them, but I'll call them on the carpet. I'll be the guy to hold it up. I don't care. I'll sleep like a baby at night. We can't get this passed. I know you can't. Change. Yeah. Right? Sometimes short answers work. Everybody's like, oh, no, you really got to think that out. It's like, no, border, stop, change. You can do it. Just stop being an idiot. Right?
You touched on this earlier, that you haven't been kind of picked on yet.
Right.
Are you prepared, if when that moment does come, to?
Yeah, because I don't care. It's real simple. Either I don't think there's anything in my life other than me having a big mouth, right? At times, and telling people exactly, like I talk to people the way I talk to you, right? That somebody's going to come out. There's no dark mistress in my past and things like that and whatnot. Everybody goes through life. You live a life. You've got great moments. You got moments you may not be so proud of, right? But there's nothing in my past that I wouldn't own up to. I'd be like, and I think that would be unsettling for them. So I'm warning them right now, right? Go ahead. Yeah, I own it. Yeah, I did that. Sorry. Did the price of gas go down now since you exposed that little flaw? Right? Did everybody just walk outside and go, oh, $2.50? But we know that about him, right?
Yeah.
So whatever it is, and I mean, I really can't sit there and say, unless somebody really disgruntled comes out that I'm completely unaware of, which I'd address immediately, right? And I'd probably use a lot of 4-letter words while I was doing it because we all know what that would be about then. But I mean, it's a whatever. I don't care. I mean, again, it goes down to one of these things. It's like we're in such desperate shape here that you can't sit there and look for a choir boy, okay? And actually, this is a really good point. To fix this country, you're going to have to do some messy things. And people are going to feel pain, which is why I'm saying people are feeling pain now. So we can have a little more pain, right? Fix it now so the next 10 years, we don't have any more pain, okay? So you got to get people in there who are willing. I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it for the rah-rah. I'm not doing it for notoriety. Trust me, you got 24 more months of pain because the Biden administration's in there. All you're doing right now with this election across the nation is you're putting the pieces in to manage the pain, to put pain where it's supposed to be, so you can have a great outcome going forward for the rest of your life. If you don't do that now, everybody's like, oh, let's get this election, then we'll get the other one. It's like, nah, you get this election and you start putting the pieces in, right? First one is just to stop spending, right? First one is to curtail whatever Joe Biden's administration is throwing out there. Close the border. Do all, whatever you can do on the legislative side of the government, you do.
Right.
Okay. Then you go for the executive branch. We'll see how it goes. But they just to get back to the nuts and bolts of your question, I don't think, unless somebody asks me about it, I'm not going to pay too much attention to it.
Right.
And I think we're so short right now. If the Republicans come after me, I don't know what they would say. Oh, all they're doing is they're recognizing that I'm taking votes from them. And we've had a discussion about this because I still have my secret phone number out there that nobody knows about. Right. And I get the poll callers calling me. And so when I'm taking the polls, because I take those calls, I want to know. When I take the polls, it always starts out with, are you Republican, Democrat? It's not Republican, Democrat, Independent. Do you know what's going on? That sort of thing. And I say, well, I'm neither Republican or Democrat. Okay, well, which way do you lean? I said, well, I don't believe in do I have to have this choice? They're like, yeah, it's got to be one or the other. We can't finish the poll. Right there, I'm boxed out.
Yeah.
Right? So am I polling? I don't know, because there isn't a poll out there that's taken me into consideration. And if there is, what is that number?
Right.
So I don't care. I don't care what the number is right now. I know I got 3 billboards up with my face splashed all over them, and I'm looking at the traffic on my website and it's going up.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think that they're going to pull some rabbit out of the hat and start saying my name. The minute you say my name in the mainstream media, you give me breath. And I think what they want to do is they want to keep their hands around my throat and keep choking. If the Democrats were smart, they would be saying my name all over the place.
Yeah.
Because I don't see her. I said if the election was held today, I think she'd get reelected. You got 2 ugly candidates as far as policy goes. Okay. His work ethic, I don't know anything about him. I keep talking to people. The people who do know him are like, I mean, is that what you want to elect? And when they talk about her, they don't like her, and you don't like her because of her policies. And I don't really like bashing them, and I've kind of stayed away from that. But I will say one thing about Cortez Masto, that really you should never, ever vote for her. And this is why. Regardless of the policies, regardless of the pain that we have, regardless of all that stuff, you look at what Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema did, where they stopped the Democrat legislation for their own selfish reasons in their own state, right? And said, you will service my state on what I say, or you're not going to go forward with this, right? Cortez Masto never did anything for Nevada.
Yeah.
She's the 51st vote the leverage you have to stop policy is trillions of dollars worth. I would have been using that on every single vote. You know what? I'm not going to let that legislation go by because I want my river fixed. I want the Colorado River to be managed better. You're going to go, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the Department of Interior. You're going to tell Michelle Tootin and at the Bureau of Reclamation that all contracts are null and void now. And we're going to reorganize that. And then maybe I'll think about voting for this, right? I got to solve, if I was in her shoes the last 6 years, I could have solved this the last 2 years. We wouldn't be talking about Hoover Dam. You guys would be sitting here going, oh, it's filling up. I'm like, yeah. Like I stuck it to them, right?
So say you are elected to Senate. If things go well for you and you find yourself in office, what do the first 100 days look like?
Good question, because I don't have an answer for that. I know it's going to be a whole bunch of me trying to figure a whole bunch of stuff out, right? How it works, because you know what they say, how it works and how it really works. It's kind of like going to college. Oh, you're prepared for the workforce, and then you get out there and you figure out how the workforce really works.
That's right.
I imagine that those first 100 days are going to be that, right? You have to be selective and strategic about what relationships you make. Obviously, I'd caucus Republican, but you know what? I would go over to that Democrat side and try to find more of the blue dog Democrats to say, hey, look, you don't have to be Republican or Democrat if we know what we're doing is correct. Okay. So I'm not just going to go run in and go Republicans, yay. I would probably spend a lot of time on the Democrat side to find those guys or those women who are open to the idea of finally actually doing stuff regardless of what the party tells you to do.
Yeah.
Because I have that leeway. If I got elected today, I don't owe anybody anything. The story is that, oh yeah, you got elected, you first day, there's 50 people outside your door who donated to you. There's going to be zero. None.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the ability to do that because when people say I want to get at this late stage, people call me up. Oh my God, you're running. This is the greatest thing. And I got to tell you this, when people call me who know me, it's not a sense of elation. I think it's a sense of relief that they have. I don't have to choose between these two guys. It's relief. They're like, oh, thank God. And it's almost like they're like, well, I don't care that you're a third party. You know, I think in any other election, they would care. And they say, where can I donate? Where can I donate? And I go, I don't want your money. I just don't. I'm self-funded right now. I don't want your money. I want you to take that email list that you have of friends, family, vendors, anybody you've ever touched in your life, and you email them my website and you say, I know this guy and I like him. But because politics are so contentious within the family, don't go with I endorse them or that sort of thing. I'd like for you to endorse me. But like kids hate their parents because they're Democrat, they're Republican or whatever. One's an environmentalist, one's not. Just send them to my website and let people decide for themselves. It's your vote. It's in secret. You get inside that box. You're not Republican, Democrat. You're whoever you are.
Oh yeah.
Right?
That's right. That's a great comment. I always felt like solutions don't come out of a donkey or come out of an elephant. They come out of getting everyone into a room together and figuring this thing out.
Yeah.
And I like that comment about don't box yourself into an R and a D. You know, the solution is going to come out with someone like you who's going to have sort of new ideas and wants to work across the aisle with folks to get things done.
Yeah, I think they're ready for it. I mean, what's going on now doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work, and I think everybody is furious that it's unavoidable anymore about the amount of debt that's out there. It's unavoidable about money and things like that. And everybody may say, yeah, I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it, but it's the first thing that's going to affect your life. Okay. The misery in your life comes straight from the debt. So when you get up in the morning, you're miserable and you can't afford this and you can't afford that, right? You look at the federal government and remember, though you may have had to fire people and maybe you were the ones that got laid off and stuff like that, not the federal government. They don't get penalized, right? There is no punishment for them. There's just oops, well, what's next? And I don't like, I don't like the fact that we have to wait 4 years. I'm trying to find a solution to send the signal immediately. You're doing the wrong thing, right? Which is why in the next legislative session, you lower taxes, right? But that's got to be implemented now to go in perpetuity going forward. If you don't perform at this function, everybody's tax rates drop.
Yeah.
Right? And you got to have people like me to do it. I don't care. I don't care what you say. I'm going to go in there. I got grit. I got leadership ability. I can do this. Right? Once you codify that into law, Supreme Court can't even stop it.
Yeah. 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 That's that. You are a. I like that. Everything you're telling us here seems logical, sensible. You know.
Well, and
that approach, yeah.
That seems like Bizarro World and Superman.
yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. It's the execution kind of that matters. You know.
Right.
And
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good observation.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything that you said today that any reasonable human being would disagree with.
Right.
You know. And it's just, how do you get elected and being able to execute some of these things is probably the next hurdle. But I don't know how to articulate the because it feels like you go up there, you're elected, and
you get corrupt. You're corrupted.
You're corrupted. Yeah, it feels like
I've had everybody say that to me. That has been spoken several times.
Yeah.
Everybody has the best intentions till they get there.
Yeah.
And so I'll make a pledge. I won't be corrupted. And it's like, this goes back to the pain. Okay. You want the pain now. You better like pain with me.
When you say pain, and
Right.
you've mentioned that several times
Right.
in this conversation, like the short-term pain that we're going to have to go through in order
Right.
to have like a long-term solution.
Right.
Can you articulate exactly what you mean by pain?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So change, which is what has to happen, is often accompanied with discomfort, right? And even in the federal government. So at some point in time, let's just get Sherman in the Wayback Machine, but go forward with it, and say that I'm in Congress and say I am the 51st vote, and we're coming down to my pet peeve is too much spending, and I'm saying we have to have a balanced budget, and everybody's running around with their hair on fire going, we can't, I need to take dollars back to my state. First of all, yes, everybody should have the dollars which their state input to the federal government returned to them. That is the basic function of it. When Congress people say, oh, look at all these dollars I brought in, that's like breathing. You should bring those things back. Don't claim credit for something that I should expect no matter what, right? But when we get down to say we need to balance the budget, and it doesn't have to be an amendment. You just got to have the balls to do it, right? And it comes down to my vote, and the budget's not balanced. I go no. And so say everybody on the Democrat side says, well, we need it, and everybody else on the Republican side says we're not going to do it either, or we want it, and however it is, the conflict resides on me. Until they do what I tell them, I'm going on vacation. Okay, that means the government's going to shut down. That means the FAA shuts down and the airports don't work. That means your economy shuts down. For me to save the country, I got to shut down the economy? Okay, that's my look at it. Somebody's going to walk in and say, I'm going to give you $1 billion, blah, 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 to take back to your state. It doesn't matter. We're in such a peril right now to get forward that the amount of pain we may have to endure to get our elected officials to do what's right. So going forward, we can tackle things like the debt. So going forward, we can grow the economy. So going forward, we can expand our tax base. May take that kind of pain. Okay. I haven't talked about raising taxes once, have I? No. I'm talking about cutting taxes. Okay. Well, wait, what about pain? That's great if you're cutting taxes, right? Yeah. Well, you might not have the government services that you want because I'm going to make government smaller, but that's good because now you have the income to overcome those things, right? I'm putting power back into you through your wallet. Okay. But everybody, and it's not just you. You guys live in a certain realm and a certain economy and sort of thing. There's people in urban areas that are going to be affected. Everybody's going to be affected. How they're affected, it's going to be painful, right? Some people live off government food stamps. Some people live off other kind of handouts, that sort of thing. States come in. California always has their handout to the federal government. Guess what, California? You need to figure out your budget so it works for you. So I can't tell you exactly how it's going to come. I'm just spitballing on ideas, but I could see it be where no, the whole thing can shut down. Trump did it, right? And he could only hold out for so long. The minute they stopped the airplanes flying, I'm like, he should have held up. Who cares?
Yeah.
You're not fixing the problem going forward. Okay. And I think the response when he did that, the response was they went right back into monster spending. He was like, I'll never sign this much money away again. Okay. We all know you're a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
Okay. So action louder than word. We're going to have to be very painful about this because we can't trust you going forward to implement what needs to be done. I'm talking about actually implementing solutions, not talking about them and saying, okay, we'll do that in a bit. Well, let's spend this money now. Because that's what happened. That's why we're at $31 trillion in debt.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that concept of taking a hit.
Got to take a hit now.
Yeah. That is something that no one is saying. So
no. And it was, I was given a talk about my position over at the National Utility Contractors Association. Sisolak shows up, Treasurer shows up. They talk about how great they were during COVID and stuff like that. And my comment to him was, I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about the next 18 months. You're going to be firing people. And the looks on their face was like, what? I'm like, yeah, why don't we talk about now and going forward? What good does managing COVID? You get the warm fuzzies. I didn't get that from Sisolak when I went through it, right? You don't talk about what you're going to do to prepare for the future. You're done. And that's basically what I'm saying. Recognize where you're at. How bad is it? Don't pull punches, okay? And then prep for it. Prep for getting out of it. That's all that's got to happen. But it's complex. It's painful. And so I'm going to tell people, yeah, it's going to be pain. We can all get through it though. I mean, I know we can, but this would be my one future prediction would be this is the last time and this is the last chance without fundamentally changing politics. If we ignore it now, you'll be living in a socialistic society in 50 years, period, the end. Yeah. You're going to be relying on the government to give you everything. The government's going to tell you when you can take a dump, when you can't, that sort of thing. Yeah. They'll be out there measuring cow farts. I mean, it's weird to think of that because I grew up in the 80s and there was freedom everywhere.
Yeah.
And I just see it, going away.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Josh or Gio? You got any questions? No?
I think we covered it, man.
Yeah.
Very wide-ranging conversations. What about you, Barry? Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
Well, I don't know. I tend to have an opinion about everything these days, right? No, I think that's just plenty for people to digest. Yeah. I will tell you this. Overall, people really need to focus on fixing government, not fixing government, but fixing the way government is managed now. Okay. So if you don't really get to the nuts and bolts, and you gotta, we go back to finance, but you see through my conversation how I always go back to, well, they can't manage that. You don't have banks lending, you have this. And that's why Wall Street's running everything. And I'm not saying it's horrible. I don't think it's bad, but Wall Street ever take a hit? They got bailed out in 2008. Oh, we can't let them go under.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Really? Maybe we can, because I know I've seen a fire sale before, and people tend to come in and pick up pieces of that company, and then they make more money, right? And they hire more people.
That's how that works.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, the political theory and economic theory right now, the way it's being practiced. I mean, Bank of England the other day had to admit that they made a mistake because they bought too many of the bonds as their inflation's going crazy, and they just drove it up more.
Yeah.
Those mistakes have to stop.
Yeah.
And you stop it by not rescuing things, and you let the market take its course.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I think another criticism that a lot of people, not just you, but people running unaffiliated have is that they take votes away from the candidates that society sees as more viable, either on the Democratic or Republican side. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't care who I take votes away from. You don't have the guts to go out there and earn it, then that's on you. I mean, if they're saying at the end of the day, if I'm not elected, right, and I'm not going to be one of these guys I always thought it was insulting for politicians throughout the years to go, when I'm elected and yada, yada, yada. It's stupid. You don't know. I don't know if you're going to be elected, right? Nobody knows. That box is secret, right? So I'm not going to sit there and say when I'm elected. I'm going to say if I'm elected, if people sit there and go, hey, we're going to give that guy a shot, right? And the national news reports, well, he took votes away from Catherine Cortez Masto. It's like, good. She didn't earn it. She locked herself in her broom closet, right, for the whole election cycle. Couldn't come out. I can't, you know what? I can't say that. She was on a Zoom call with me with a group up in Reno. So she did show up. She was supposed to go first. She showed up in the middle of it. I got to go first. I was kind of wondering if she was watching me. Who is this guy? What he's doing?
Yeah.
So she's not hiding completely, but I was laughing with Florine the other day. We drove down an off-ramp. I go, here's the only 2 signs I see of Adam Laxalt anywhere. Neither of them are out there. Neither of them are doing it. I may not have a lot of money, but at least I went to the Baikal Festival with all the Filipinos. I'm doing another podcast. Thank you for being my first one, right? So now I understand this.
Yeah.
I'm doing another podcast for them, supposedly. Still got to firm that up, but I'm going to another dinner and stuff like that. And I'm trying to do as much as what I can on the budget that I have, right? And I just don't. I mean, when the governor shows up to the same place I am and the other 2 Senate candidates don't, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
What are they running? What are they running from? So,
do you want to go ahead and bury it? I hate to ask this question, but I feel like it's appropriate.
Never hate it.
So tell me why people should vote for you.
Change agent. Everybody right now has zero confidence in our elected officials. Okay. We've been doing the same thing every election cycle for the last 50 years. And I think more and more it's coming out that it's about money and power than the people. Okay. And I can guarantee you, I give the middle finger to anybody who says, oh, I give you money, so you have to do this. When I'm like, what's the situation? I'm going to do what's best for the situation for the people. I'll tell you a story. So, my insurance guy, when I first did this months ago, my insurance guy goes, well, how do you feel about bikers? I go, I like them. They go down the road. Harleys are cool, right? And he says, well, because he's a biker, right? Well, I'm going to introduce you to a guy. You go have a talk with him, and maybe you get all this bikers club. And I'm not just talking about like the Hells Angels and the Mongols, but there's a whole bunch of different biker people out there, right, who do clubs and they go riding and things like that. You go on the road to Sturgis, you're going to see 12 of them, right? They're not Hells Angels or Mongols, right? And so I said, oh, okay, yeah. He goes, he could have it. He goes, and he's kind of like the segue between the Hells Angels and Mongols and then the other biker club. He's kind of like the bridge between them. He says, go talk to him. Maybe you can get, the biker vote. And I went, oh, okay. So, I met him at a Starbucks, right? And I'm sitting across from this guy, and he was older, but you could tell he used to be there, right? He had some bona fides just in the way he looked, right? And so he tells me his background. I'm like, okay, that's great. And he just flat out said to me, what are you going to do for me? I went, nothing. I can do anything for you. I'm telling you what I'm doing. And he was like, well, we have a big problem of being stereotyped by the police. And I said, well, yeah, that shootout down in Lofton. And I said, you do understand this is a federal job I'm going for. This is not state. I'm not going to sit here and repair your relationship with Metro, that sort of thing. I mean, we're having a little more serious conversation, but this is the way it was going. Yeah. And so I talked to him long enough where I think he seriously liked me. I mean, he gave me his gang name and everything like that. So I was like, I'm in, right? I'm in. But we were walking out to the parking lot, and he said, I'm going to have 2 more guys call you before we decide, whether you're going there. And he was serious. He's like, when you come, make sure that I'm with you or something like that, because you don't want to show up at one of those things, right? I'm like, okay. And I walked to the back of my car, and on the back of my car, I've got the Blue Lives Matter sticker on it because my kid's a cop. Mm-hmm. And I pointed at it, and I go, what do you think about that? And he goes, maybe it's best you shouldn't come. Okay. I'm not making promises to groups of people. Okay. My platform is on my website. I'm going to stick to it. I've been telling you guys, I'm not going to hide away from the tough answers, which is, guess what? I'm not doling out money because we all need a little bit of pain to get ourselves under control. Okay. If that means some group's not going to vote for me, that means some group's not going to vote for me. My feelings aren't hurt because you think somebody else who hands you a dollar bill is better than me. I'm telling you right now, you're going to be in poverty your whole life if you keep going down the road that you're on. I'm not talking about 3 years. I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm talking about in 15 years, and we're all still going to be here, that world's going to be immensely different if they don't change the way they operate. What are your standards in life should be applied to the standards that you have in Congress? And they don't do it. There's always some exception, and I won't compromise that. And I'm not saying that I was a goody two-shoes growing up, because I wasn't, and I really, really, really enjoyed my life, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it also builds character when you live life to the fullest as much as you can, and you get put in certain situations so you can bring that experience with you. I don't need to compromise. You know what? I got what I have, and what I have is enough, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing I can really say about that is, well, I could say a lot, but I heard this analogy about the captain of the Titanic once, and he had captained his whole life, 30, 40 years, never, ever, ever had a problem on a ship. Everything went smoothly. Never a problem. Through seas and hurricanes and wherever he went, never had a problem. He lacked experience when he hit the iceberg, and that's why so many people died. Didn't know what to do, had never been in a tough situation, had never, ever dealt with adversity on that sort of level. I'm no captain of the Titanic, okay? And when I referenced that people were calling me, and there was a sense of relief in their voice because now they got a third choice, I imagine it's the same kind of relief that the people in the lifeboats from the Titanic had when they saw their Carpathia coming up to pick them up out of the water. I mean, that's the feeling that I get. And I think you just, in Congress right now, they're all just captains of the Titanic, and they don't want to go down with the ship. They're cowards on top of it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got for you.
That's a great answer. Clip that and put that out, man. Yeah. Barry, we have touched on.
Is that enough?
My goodness. How long have we been going, Gio?
Probably an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah. I think we've asked, is there anything else about 9 times?
Yeah.
I'm scared to ask that question again.
Let me sleep on it. I'll come back with more stuff. You guys will be like, oh, yeah, that too. Yeah, that's how complex it is, guys. And you have to understand, it all is intermingled. It all is, I went from, look, you're going to put fuel in your car all the way up through a credit market, right? And how that affects it. Everything is that way. If you don't understand the system and how everything is intermixed, which most politicians don't, because they don't have the experience. We went through my experience. I touched on every part throughout my life, on just about every part of the economy in some way, shape, or form, including media, right? So why not elect me? But I'm just telling people up front, you want to take the pain now, and it's going to be painful. If I was to have my way, it'd be painful, but I'd have it over in 2 years. We'd be done in 2 years, maybe shorter, because I think you can have that V-shaped recovery. I think you can, but it's going to be painful.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Barry.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah. And I definitely want you to come on again. So.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks
Might be a little tougher when you're a senator, though.
Yeah. No. You'll be the first. You got my phone. You got the bat phone, right?
All right. I appreciate. I do have that. Yeah.
Lucky us. Lucky us.
I'll come on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Barry.
Flo was here with me, so thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.